So I'm going to begin the seminar about what if people did not care about trees. And so I given this seminar to a lot of the trainings that people who work with trees. And so this I'm sharing my screen now, and I'll begin to talk about it. So when we're working with trees, there's going to be several organizations that are going to be important. One of them is going to be the Street Tree Seminar. They are in charge, or they are the authorities of trees that get planted along the streets. So they develop some books and materials, as well as the International Society of Arboriculture and or the West Coast chapter of the International Society of Arboriculture. And so when we look at areas that do not have trees, we already talked about the standing trees of Long Beach, but we can see that they're sterile. We can see that there's no trees, such as this area by the port, close to Santa Fe, and it needs trees. When we begin to see some of the more historic trees, this is the camphor tree, cinnamomum. This would be large trees that you find here in California Heights in Long Beach. Here's the jacarandas that we have also around here. We'll get to those later, as well as the Chinese elms. And so once again, we can begin to see where the trees have been planted, and it looks much better. It softens the area. And we can also see the trees right here with the nice silhouette for the look it over. And the pine trees, Italian stone pines here used as a street tree, and the jacarandas once again. In the neighborhoods, we can begin to see trees as well, including some of the ficus and Canary Island pine, and our Chinese flame tree as it's going dormant and losing its leaves, and also our tulip tree, and even palms. We'll later see palms, but palms are also going to be considered a tree for our purpose. And so when we begin to see all the greatness of trees here, you always have to go back to where it started. And so it was many years ago when a group of people decided to get together and find some rights for trees in a way. There were no laws, there were no guidelines to say this tree should be pruned in a certain manner. There was no guidelines to say you should plant this tree, not this other tree. And there was nothing. And so to have a group of people get together and develop a mission statement and guidelines for the protection of trees. That was unheard of during those days. But in fact, they did some really good pioneer work. And that is why when we look around here in a lot of the municipalities, they do have very nice trees because of their work. So these are the list and some of those historic photographs that you might see. And so I decided, how do I best tell this story? How do I make people understand the value of trees? Because nobody is really going to understand unless they see it. We are seeing the results that are out there, part of the work. And so I said, maybe, if some way, somehow, I can go back in time. Go back in time and change history where that group that started the tree work in the past was never existing. So we say that we can use the power of the many trees that are out there to give us the ability to fly back in time. And so moving back in time, we're going to see, be able to determine and change the past. So that's what we're doing right now, going back into the past. So theoretically, assuming, use your imagination, we've gone back into the past, and the West Coast arborists and all of the work, all of the seminars that took place that helped people with the trees, never existed. We have all of the advertisement, the seminars, and or the trade shows where a lot of this information is disseminated, never took place. There were scholarships that have been given to people to study trees. And we have here Amy, a student of mine, or ex-student, that got the scholarship during that photograph. So what if all this help given to people to become tree experts never existed? The book, Street Trees for Southern California, the book that is the authority and or the reference for the streets along the street trees, never existed. And so we have what I like to refer to as a Long Beach. It could be any municipality in a parallel universe where street tree never existed and all the rules and all the protection for trees were never developed. And so we can tour around, we see some trees, we see a standard municipality, cement, everything. We can see Signal Hill, perhaps, right there. And then we see the streets. The streets that are still missing some trees, and there's might be a few here and there, but pretty much we have the traffic, we have the pollution, we have everything that goes with that municipality, and including that. And we have parks, parks that are going to be grass and a couple of trees here and there. And then we have just plain simple hiking trails for people or exercise trail for people. And then the areas where the trees should be planted or should have been are non-existing. The trees are not there. Instead, other plants have taken their place. We have the side of the streets with the cutouts for the trees. And if no trees are present, then we're gonna have cement. Cement that is going to be placed because there's no trees there. And once again, we had just an area where there should be trees, but nothing is planted. And an area here as well. And so when we begin to look at trees in the present time, here is the jacaranda. Moving it back in time, we are going to find something like this. That is a tiny plant placed in the middle of a sidewalk, between the street and the sidewalk. It has very little chance of surviving. Here in the present, we have trees standards, so there's supposed to be a certain size of the tree that you should plant, not this very tiny thing. We have our ficus or our banyan here that is going to change into something like this. Pruning protocols have not been developed. And so when I say that a tree needs to be a minimum of 15 feet, something like this does not qualify as a tree. And so we can see pruning practices that simply shear the trees, that just hack and slash, and they create different shapes, different forms, a bunch of weird things that the trees are going to be subject to. They can allow them to get a little bit bigger and even bigger, and a few of them that are going to be round, and even no space between the trees and no spacing. ADA compliance here is non-existing either, so nobody really cares if somebody's using a wheelchair. The trees are going to be planted and they're going to maybe block the area. So we're allowed to get bigger. We might see something like this or the multi-stem. And so every single tree in the sidewalk or planted as a street tree is not cared by the municipality, is not cared by the government. And so the people will find a way to trim it and keep it under control, creating the different cubes, creating the different screens, creating whatever they want with some of these trees. So here we have the ficus made into cubes. And here's a different view of those. Here we have the multi-poodle or the multi-pom-pom. Here's again the Christmas tree. And here's the three-tier topiary and more of a multi-pom-pom topiary. Here we have the double layer, and here we have different angles to that. Some of them that can be used as an entryway for garages or uh, uh, doors, and some of them that are going to be made into a house, a tree house. Now, personally, I think this is very nicely done, but it's still a tree. It's still a tree shaped into a house with a window and a light. Where we have some trees that are able to have the natural form, such as this Ficus benjamina or Chinese banyan, they are then going to find themselves in an area that is not made for them. First of all, the area where they might be growing is going to be very, very small. So to begin with, as soon as they get any kind of height or spread, they're going to begin to cause some serious damage to the infrastructure. The city never made any kind of plans to having large trees or small trees for that matter. And so here's one that has been allowed to grow at least naturally. It's blocking the sidewalk. And here we have restrictions to certain height so that you do not have people hitting their face or head on the tree branches. Here we have a couple more just planted together, natural form. And here's in the present time, how they should look, how they will do very nicely, and they can definitely enhance the property and the area. In that parallel world, they may look like this. Trees, when they're not respected, may get set on fire. So fire danger is always going to be a problem. It is easy for teenagers, children to go around with matches, light up things. And that is what happened here. Somebody ignited the tree and it's causing some serious problem. And it's damaging the tree. So vandalism, they don't care about trees. And we have a few more right here. And so the question is, within this universe, why do trees get painted with white paint? I've seen it in almost all my travels through Central and South America, and I keep asking people why. I get 101 reasons. Many say that is to keep insects from growing up or climbing up the tree. But I say that I have evidence that that is not working because ants do keep going up and down. So there are many, many reasons. The more logical one that I found was because during the time of the plagues, when people did not understand diseases, uh, if there was an epidemic that went through the town, it killed many people, and it was customary to whitewash the walls, whitewash the buildings, whitewash the trees as a way of deterring the diseases. So because most during that time, they were worried about diseases on animals and people, which the trees are not susceptible to those diseases. The only thing that survived was the trees in many cases. And so they probably then assumed that it was the whitewashing that helped with keeping the trees happy and safe. For many tropical trees like avocado, if you're going to prune them heavily, you should paint the stem because they have a very soft skin and they can get sunburned. So enough, then depending on the situation, it is important to do it for sun protection, but in most other cases where you see trees painted with white, unless they're using some kind of harsh chemicals to keep the insects away, just plain simple white paint is not going to do it. And in most cases, it's just a person with a brush and a little bit of white paint that is going to go around and paint the trees. So they're not using any kind of pesticides, any kind of product to really take care of that problem. We have tree houses from the people who wanted to build them on top of trees. Obviously, they cut the branches. They did some really horrible topping here. And then we have trees that if allowed to grow big, then we're gonna see that serious damage to the foundation, serious damage to the sidewalk. Here's a perfect example. We have trees which are not meant to be next to the sidewalk. They're planted maybe in an area that is 3 feet or 4 feet wide, and that's about it. So obviously there's no place for them to grow but through the sidewalk, and they would break it without any effort. Here we have trees that are allowed to grow very close to the traffic. So they were not shaped. And so naturally now they have to cut them back so that they're not gonna hit some of the higher trailers or tractors or the higher vehicles, as you see there. They also have to clear the electrical lines. And so we have a problem with them just cutting branches and not really shaping the trees, and in the process, misshaping the trees. We have carob tree right here, how it should look when cared for it properly. We have Afrocarpus graciliar fern pine, how it should look when it grows properly or cared for properly. And then we have the same trees, the carob trees here made into boxes, and or the Afrocarpus here made into boxes. The height is going to be determined with how high can the person get to. And in most cases, it will be done with a ladder. And so whatever height they're able to reach with that ladder is going to be the height that the tree is going to be pruned. Most of these are probably being pruned by the same person, and that is why they're exactly the same height, even though it might be different property. When there is some work done by the municipalities, the concept of using electrical equipment may not be there. So when you look at this photograph, they are shaping this very large tree with simple shearing or shear pruners. So that's going to happen with a lot of the large ones. So there is a crane, there is a cherry picker, as it is referred to, but obviously that is going to take a lot longer. So there is a little bit of care, but still the tools necessary to carry out the job more effectively, efficiently, might not be there. Instead, it's this I mentioned before, whatever they're able to reach, just a person going around asking or offering their services to prune the trees, and it's going to be how they're going to be cared for. No guidelines, just kind of make it into a box. It's very simple, shape it, voila, it's done. It's good for several years. Even though the municipality, the city does not care about the trees, do not care for the trees, they still do not want the trees to be removed. So if somebody were to remove a tree, they will still get fined or be asked to replace it. So in most cases, what people will do is they will literally kill the tree, let it stand until the city goes there and removes it, and that could be many, many years. So their tree mortality is going to be very high. So here, pruning with just some loppers and shaping it, so just making it look pruned. And that's why we have some of this. You have businesses that although they would like to have maybe some plants, at the end of the day, they might not appreciate their sign being blocked by trees, and so they cannot allow these individuals to grow. Or there is no such thing as watering. Irrigation, non-existing. We don't have any irrigation system. And so if they are lucky, maybe perhaps they may get a drink of water from the AC unit or the air conditioning unit. So here they care for the tree, they ran a line or some kind of pipe underneath the cement. And so that is giving the tree a little bit of a drink and or creating a big tunnel underneath it. So that's the only water that this tree may get. So this might be a lucky one. And it's all coming from the air conditioning unit from the building. And you have scenarios such as this where the entire tree base is completely covered with cement. Trees still need to breathe, the roots need to breathe. They still need to get some water. So if you don't give it to them in the general vicinity, they'll find it. And then people wonder, why is it that they're breaking the cement? Why are they breaking the foundation? Why are they doing this and that? Because you have given them no choice. So here we have completely covered. Here we have extreme pruning, where they chop the tree in more than half. And even when they're dead, trees are not given a proper burial or respect. They're still used as a sitting area, or still have some use for them. So here's a tree that did not made it, or they get put plants all on top of them. We have magnolias here, cared for properly. We have magnolias that are in really bad shape. So branches that are dead, branches that are pruned improperly, and we'll take it to talk about that later. Some of them that look a little bit better, but nothing like the first photograph, because they don't have an area to grow. This is about 1.5 feet wide, so not big enough. We have those jacarandas here, properly cared for. And then we have jacarandas there that are just ugly. Uh, some of them could look better. Here's bad pruning where there's just one branch left and that's it. Here's some that look even better, but still nothing like the first photographs that I showed you. We have eucalyptus right there. And then here's where they chopped it, and it's resprouting. It kind of looks like a ball like all the others. And we have that one. And other horrible pruning, they just left one tiny lateral branch become the dominant, and that's all we have, leaves there. And then we have here just a couple of water sprouts, branches that are just growing straight up as a result of bad pruning that are just left. And allowed to be big, we have foundation problems. So we have sidewalks and cement that is get broken, and roots that are never meant to have anything on top. So that's gonna happen. We have some conifers here cut in half, but also a very tiny area for them to grow. We have some brick here lining this tree basin, and even a little bit taller, such as this. And then we have yucca as a street tree in this parallel world. Some of them could be fancy and worth a little bit of money, and others are simply your Home Depot round edge paver that you see there, and some just the cement circle. And just the squares. We have a melaleuca here, or the bottle brush, as is now referred to. Here they are, made into balls, multi-stem. Here we have them a little bit taller and a little bit more natural. And here we have where they're least cared for a little bit. Really bad pruning, really bad cement damage from every angle. We have more really bad pruning right there. And just a couple of branches in there. We have Araucaria called the Norfolk Island pine. Here we have the two different species that we'll see later. Natural, easy, narrow, straight stem branches. Here we have a different view of those. And even those, the worst thing you can do is cut them in half, but they have done it. And now the nice form that the tree will acquire naturally is completely destroyed. We have some of the ficus or the figs. This is elastica. And then we have coral trees right here in Bixby Park. And those are going to also be looking really ugly and bad. So such as that. And breaking the cement and doing a bunch of other damage. Some of them a lot bigger and also breaking. We have casuarina, or I think it's she oak, or some other common casuarina. Back in time, we're gonna find that it's just a skeleton with a couple of leaves and other bad pruning that was done. Here, they want nothing more than to line the entrance to this house. But once again, the trees have a very broad base and they're not gonna be too happy in the very tiny space that they were planted. And there's the space between the tree and the wall, which is just a couple of feet, not even wide enough for a wheelchair. Some of the smaller trees may have a chance, like a purple leaf plum that you see here. So perhaps, but don't guarantee. We have the China berry here, beautiful, and in our world, it's not that happy. We have a Brazilian pepper. We'll see peppers later on, how they look very nice, but here they just look really ugly, not cared for properly and not looking nice. African wild plum here looking quite nice in North Long Beach. Not too good here. Now they have blocked the driveway, so it's very difficult to enter through the car because it has now lifted everything. So becomes a big problem. And at the end of the day, we know that the trees are going to lose. So unless they fix the cement, which they will not, the trees will eventually get killed either by the owner of the area or when they get removed for the damage. And then we have this blue tree, and I was intrigued by it because I've never seen a tree with this blue flowers or this shape and form. So I took this photograph, like, wow, that looks kind of nice. What happened here? And so what it is, the blue is a Cape plumbago. It is a shrub, kind of vining. The shrub is growing from the house and it went up and over an arch and is now growing on top of a dead tree. From a distance, it looks really nice, but we know that that is not what it's supposed to look like. But for now, I guess it's a great use of a dead tree with another plant that gives it a very nice appearance. So I was kind of impressed by this. It was quite good. And now we have some bougainvillea that is also allowed to grow onto these trees just to give it a little bit more color. So we have 4 trees there kind of lining, making this solid wall, and bougainvillea growing in between them, such as this. Hibiscus, when they have flowers, they might have some kind of potential. They might be cared for a little bit more, but don't press bet on it. So we have a few hibiscus trees that are looking kind of decent. Some of them are still shrubby-like, some of them needing some work. When there is any kind of road construction, road repair, the trees are always going to be destroyed. So here we have, they're changing the tarmac. You can see the exposed roots of the trees. That is damaged. That is not going to repair itself. That is damaged. That is going to be cause serious problem to the trees. That is damage that will eventually kill the trees. But once again, they want to repair the roads. The roads are very important, but the trees are not really important, and they don't really care for, or nor do they care to protect them. If you have flowers and you might have some kind of toxin like oleander, maybe you have a way to survive. So kind of looking nice, but they're small and lots of flowers, and people like them. Where you have some edible fruit, perhaps that is going to be a better way of dealing with this situation. Here we have citrus growing happily here, and then here we have a citrus growing okay. So it's been cared for, but still growing in a very narrow, small space, already breaking cement. So even trees that you normally don't think could break cement, they will if given the chance. We have the fiddle leaf fig here, very happy there. It's not too bad, but it could be way better with the large foliage. And then we have African tulip tree, beautiful flowers here, and they're butchered because they have to allow for the traffic to go through, and it's not going to look too happy. Already growing in a very small area and not being happy. Umbrella tree here, kind of looking kind of ugly and bad. We have one that's much better. We have carrot wood, semi-decent. We have ash tree here in Long Beach, looking very nice and large. Here's ash tree looking okay, not too bad. Grevillea here looking nice as a street tree. They're also looking really ugly. So topped, cut in half, allowed to branch from the bottom. It's round. And you would think that even the Italian cypress would be perfect for this tree area. It's narrow, it's columnar. Surely this would be the perfect tree. Here it is as a street tree somewhere in Los Angeles. There it's planted, so you see it, so it's not going to interfere too much with the wires. Again, very narrow. So this could be the perfect tree. Nobody could mess up an Italian cypress, except for this one here. Once again, the city is not made for having trees as a street tree. So they look very, very nice. Branches from top to bottom, leaves. But when we look at a different angle, we see that there is no space between the trees and the sidewalk. So in ADA, nobody cares about it here, but it's still going to be eventually causing a problem. So naturally, you would have to prune them to be able to do have the area exposed. Maybe this raising the canopy now from this tree looking very nice as a natural form to, we're forced to prune it to be able to have access to looking like this. Now it does not look as attractive. Just the stem and a couple of leaves on top. The job was done. It's allowing for access underneath it, but it's now has taken away the natural shape and the beauty of the tree. So, but it must be done. And here's a different view of this tree that was probably causing problems several years ago. Or maybe you can prune them, and this is really ugly pruning. Once again, the tree wants to be upright, the tree wants to be columnar, the tree wants to be high. And so here they are making them into balls. So you would assume that nobody could miss Italian cypress, but in fact, I got evidence right here that somebody did mess up Italian cypress really badly. And so I have different photographs of them here. And I had to tell them that you butcher those trees. We have different orchid trees that we'll see later on here, how they're supposed to look when they're cared for properly. Here's how they are not supposed to look. So again, no real care for them, not really being pruned, trained, and everything else that goes with the tree. We have some of the sycamores, not for small spaces. Here it's kind of looking very nicely. Here we have the sycamores in a very small space. So cut because of the wires not being allowed to become nice. Dragon trees, we'll see this one later on. It looks very, very nice, given just a little space. Here's a young one planted as a street tree. Hopefully it's not going to get too butchered. We have the yucca here, one of the best ones around. And there just a couple of nice plants here and there. And so this is where I also like to point out that yuccas are very drought tolerant and they are from the desert. So they do not run the risk of burning or sunburn on the stem. And so it almost is redundant that they're painting the stems on yuccas. So we have the yuccas right there and a very tiny yucca right there. Palms, ideally palms should be good, right? And very narrow, they don't not damage the foundation that much. They'll be perfect. And so we do have some decent palms throughout. Here we have the queen palm here in Orange County. And there we have some queen palms, and once again with white stem. Palm trees do not get stem burn. So, and to go even further, there is a light post, which is already dead, that also has the white stem. Proof that the white paint is not just for protecting the plants from sunburn. We have the native California fan palm. They're looking happy. Here, it's happy, but it is also not, because there is no place for those roots, new roots, to grow into the cement, and the tree is probably going to girdle itself, and it's probably just going to break and die. We have the date palm, which is where the dates come from. Here's three very happily in a house here in Long Beach. There, it's okay. This one looks decent. It's quite old. It'll survive. It's still growing in a very narrow area. And here, I don't know why, but why would you build a building next so close to the palm? Now, I don't know if the palm was already there and they built around it, or if they planted the palm next to that building. The fact is that you should never put a palm right next to that building. That's going to be a losing situation for the palm. But it happened, and I have the proof of that. So here's the palms, very happily in LA, Los Angeles, Mexican fan palm, and Canary Island date palm. And here we have Mexican fan palm, and not looking very happy there, but growing in a very small area. And so after all this, seeing all this abuse to the tree, once again, I went back in time, I changed everything. Then I realized that the work that was done by the Street Tree Seminar, and the work that was done to ensure that the trees are cared for and they have rights, was very, very important. And so what I ended up finding in this parallel world was a street that is devoid of any trees. And so that's not good, because we know the benefit of trees. What I ended up finding are trees that are going to be hacked and slashed and badly pruned, because there's no regulations or guidelines for pruning trees. What I ended up finding was a lot of abuse on trees, stems that have been cut, broken, everything. What I found was mortality, trees that are dead and are left to remain upright until they are removed. What I found was trees that were imprisoned or kept from extending their branches and not growing properly. What I found, those trees that were being chained and forced to life of misery by the people around them. And so trees that were also put in prison and kept with barbed wire, which is not good. And trees that got painted. And so I decided that I need to fix things. And in order for me to do that, I have to go back in time and kind of stop myself from causing all this. And so going back in time, we can fix things. We can bring back the nice trees that are cared for properly. We can enjoy the beautiful golden color of the fall by ginkgos that are cared for properly. And we have the leaves. We can re-enjoy some of the nicer African tulip trees that are cared for properly here with the flowers. We can re-enjoy some of the jacarandas in full flower during the summer here in Long Beach. We can re-enjoy our grevilleas. We can re-enjoy our peppermint willows here in Culver City, looking very, very nicely. We can re-enjoy our prickly melaleuca, shading the tree for the sidewalk and the school for the children to play under. We can re-enjoy some of the oaks that are throughout the city that are going to be very nice and majestic. And we can re-enjoy more of the other oaks, California native oaks, and even some of the palm trees. Some of the palm trees that are a lot more exotic and cared for properly. And so at the end of the day, it is very important to continue our work and to let people know that trees are good, trees are important, and we care and we love trees. And so do not be afraid to hug them whenever you see a nice tree, because it is a very important living organism. We still find painted trees here. Unfortunately, I don't know why. Around here, you might also find some trees that have been shaped and mispruned, but we'll keep working on it. Right there, and made into form and shapes. And even trees that are not taken out and they keep putting pots on top of them, which is not good. And trees that should be removed, replaced with something better, and grown in a very tiny place. And trees that get replaced with succulents growing in the middle because that's all they know. And trees made into some kind of weird Hawaiian tiki. It looks nice, but it's a dead palm. You should probably remove it, but it's great work of art. And so with that, I'll say I will let you be, and we'll end this seminar. So take care.